Welcome to Bandit's Keep. I'm Daniel. Today we're going to talk about travel or side quests. I got a nice comment, and I'm just going to read part of it here, the question part of it, which is any advice on how you'd handle travel if something would grab the party out of the planned route and going into unplanned territory? Okay, so this is a really good question, and I think what we have to do here is add some context. So when we're traveling in the game, okay, if we're talking about doing a procedural type hex crawl, open world sandbox type game, we have three ways, and I've talked about this before, but I'm just going to quickly go over it. There's kind of three ways you can handle travel. One is the narrative way. That is to just say, you travel for 2 months on the caravan, and now you arrive at your destination. This is super useful if it's just, you just want to get there, right? I sometimes do this if people are on boats or, they're just in a safe area. It probably nothing's going to happen, and that's fine. The second way is the point crawl. Now, the point crawl is one of these situations where you don't, let's say, you don't just hand wave it like I just talked about, but you don't cover every step of the way. Basically, there are generally point crawls are used where there are routes that are established, although you don't have to do that. And you can say, one point is this kingdom, the second point is this town over here, or the wizard's tower, the third point is here. And these are all places the player characters can find out about or know about. And when they say, I'm going from here to here, they're basically going to get there, right? There might be something in between. You could roll for random encounters. There could be other small obstacles, but basically they're getting there, right? They're not going to get lost per se, at least not significantly. Then we've got the hex crawl. So the hex crawl, I think, is where this question comes from. The player characters know that there's Kingdom A, and they know that there's Wizard Tower B, and they're going from one to the other over, let's say, unexplored territory or rough territory. Maybe some of it has ground, but you're playing it out step by step. Each day you're rolling to see if there's encounters, if they run out of food, if they're foraging, which can be really fun, right? This is exciting when the player characters are kind of exploring the world and learning. It's something that I do earlier in a campaign more often than later. I kind of do a hybrid as the campaign moves on. Like in my current campaign, even when they're traveling, across areas they necessarily haven't been to, if they know the area, that is, they have the map, I just kind of say, okay, we roll for random encounters or whatever, but then we kind of you get there, right? I don't worry about foraging and this kind of stuff. It's just not something that concerns a high-level party as much. They have the money and the resources to always take, for the most part, what they need with them on an adventure. So, again, we don't worry about the small details as the levels progress. But going back to the question. So in order for somebody to be off the path or go into unplanned territory, I think you really need to be in a hex crawl scenario. That is to say, they're traveling. So you're going from this kingdom to the wizard's tower to get this information or to deliver something. And along the way, you're rolling encounters. Maybe they get lost. Maybe they go over here and something catches their eye, right? They help somebody who's being set upon by a group of, trolls. And in the troll's cave, they find a treasure map, right? Or the trolls, the person gives them something and says, hey, if you bring me back to where I live, I need safe passage, then I will give you such and such. Or maybe they just want to do it because they want to help people. Or maybe the player characters get hurt. And the person says, my village is just over here and there's some healing there. So now they're diverging, right? They've got a place they're going, but they're diverging and you didn't kind of plan it. So there's a few different ways you can handle this. And, let's talk about each one individually. So the first thing is what I'm going to call a point crawl within the hex crawl. That is to say that, let's say the player characters help the person and they get injured. Let's say they're fighting lycanthropes and they get injured enough that they know it's going to be a problem. And they're like, oh no, we need a cleric to cast something on us or else we might turn into a lycanthrope. But let's say they know that, or maybe the person they helped knows that. So now they've got to go off the beaten path to find this cleric. So they're going to go there. Well, if this is really literally a result of something that's happening and the campaign's motoring along and this, for lack of a better word, call it storyline, doesn't necessarily mean much except for you don't want to just hand wave, well, don't worry about it. We don't want to worry about that. because you want your world to feel realistic, then what I would do is kind of the point crawl within the hex crawl. That is to say, when the person says, my village priest can help you, then don't have them hex crawling around trying to find the village. They're with the person. Even if the person like dies and then their final words, they kind of go 5 miles to the west and my village is there, and just point crawl it. Be like, okay, we got to go to that village to get healed up. Well, all right, you travel the next day and you get to the village. The same way you would do with the point crawl. So even though you're in a hex crawl, you're going to point crawl to these destinations that are within the hex crawl. That is, the way, if that makes sense. And then obviously you have what they get there. They have to interact. Maybe the priest, can help them. Maybe not. Maybe they've got to go on a side quest to get something. And this all comes down to how you like to run your game. If you like to run the game in a really open, anything can go way, and you don't have lots of like hardcore ticking clocks, like the world's going to end if you don't do this, then that's a great way to play. That's generally how I do things. In my world, while there's all kinds of stuff going on, very rarely is there something that player characters have to do unless they want to. If they're doing something and something else comes up, then they might get distracted. And that's actually fine, because if they don't do the original thing, then whatever that impact on the world, I've talked about this before, is, then it will be, right? If they, you got to stop this ceremony that you found out about, or else this elder god is going to rise up and, start destroying all the villages on the coast. Well, if the party goes sideways and starts following some other path to get some treasure or something, then that will happen, right? And then they can deal with it or not, right? That's going to be whatever happens. All that to say that if it's truly unplanned, but it's kind of necessary, and not necessarily something the player characters want to dig into, but it's kind of like, we need to heal up, we need supplies, we need to do this, then I would kind of point crawl it to the area to then interact and do those things. And then I would just point crawl it back to where they were and then start the hex crawl again from there. This way you're not like, okay, well, now roll to see if you get lost and now do this. And all of a sudden it takes 4 sessions to get to this village, where it really wasn't something that anybody cares about that much, except for the fact they don't want to lose their character. Now, on the other hand, and I kind of alluded to this, if the party is just traveling, because let's say they heard a rumor about a wizard's tower that they might want to investigate to maybe find some stuff, and then they run into the troll's cave and there's a treasure map there, and they pick that up and they want to go in that direction. How do we handle that when we haven't planned it? Well, this is where kind of procedures are your friends. You can at any point hex crawl, move around on the board, have things happen just simply using your procedures that you have in any of these old school games. That is, are they lost? How far can they go? Are there encounters? Who do they run into? And, ideally you're going to have your own kind of random tables, right, of what happens, like what they might run into as far as monsters. Maybe you have events that can happen. You can do all kinds of things. Again, I've talked about this in depth in different videos. Somebody actually asked me recently what I do in my own personal game, and I kind of do a mixture of things. If the party's just moving across the islands, as it would be, because in my campaign we're using the Misty Isles, and they run into something and I roll a random monster and I haven't got anything figured out, I just use the charts in the book, which is OD&D is what I'm using. And that's fine for me, because they know I'm doing it and we're okay with that. There's not like a weird immersion breaking, which some people might have with like, hold on, this is just why is there a dragon here? They're in a very fantastical place, and sometimes it's just a dragon, right? And sometimes those dragons lead to really cool things. So I just use that, but in an ideal world, you're going to have your own kind of charts, and again, like I said, I've talked about this before. Like when I did a really elaborate, when I did a campaign that was based on hex crawling, I had some charts where it was like they could run into villages, and I had breakdowns of villages, and they could run into different kinds of cults and this and that. And then, natural disasters. I had all this stuff figured out into the thing. So that as they're traveling, it was interesting. It wasn't just like, you move, there's no monster. You move, there's no monster. You move, there's a goblin, right? It was more like you travel for the day and you've come to an area of scorched earth where a black stone rises from the ground. That kind of stuff, right? So if you have some of that in your pocket, then that can be really useful. Now, there is a supplement for Dungeon World called The Wilds. If I can think of it, if I can find it, I have it somewhere. I will put a link. I'll put like a link to it, but probably somebody's yelling at the screen right now. If you know what I'm talking about, put a comment with the name of it. It's basically a way to handle wilderness exploration. It's for Dungeon World, which is very story gamey. And somebody who plays Dungeon World is probably going to take offense to that, I guess. But and it's got lots of stuff like that, like scorched earth, blah blah blah. So you could use that kind of a system if you want to roll randomly on the fly, which is what I would do. But the real trick to any of this, and this is kind of the part that's hard to really explain, is the trick is to be use the procedures, but know your world well enough to understand what might happen if the player characters do any given action. Like, it's pretty rare that a player character or the group will do something in my world that I won't at least have an idea of what might happen. I might not know the NPC's name, I might not have all the stat blocks for the specific monsters, but I have an idea of what happens if somebody goes into a town, let's say, and goes into a tavern and starts a fist fight. Like, what would be there, right? Who might be running the tavern in this particular town? Who might find out about it? Is it a lawful place where guards are going to come? Is it more, ruthless, where they might get jumped upon by other people and attacked? Or can they just get away with it? And does might rule in this area? And will there be revenge, right? These are all things I understand about my world, depending on where the player characters are. And I try to telegraph it so that they understand that what might happen to them. And sometimes the player characters will go someplace. This actually pretty recently happened. And I was, Kara King of D&D Homebrew is in my game. And they encountered this kind of tough guy, right? He on the docks. And, I knew that the guy was actually much lower level than the party. But this guy didn't know who the party was. They were just adventurers, right? I mean, an adventurer could be first level, an adventurer could be 20th level. So he tried to bully KR's character, who quickly knocked him on his butt, right? And from there, now that our relationship is being built, right? And this is because I knew that somebody in that town that was at the level that guy would be likely to push people around because they feel like they're high level, because in that town, there's not a whole lot of high level people, right? Most people are just regular people. So he was third level. That third level character is powerful, right? So he's walking around kicking butt left and right. Now Kara's sixth level character comes into town, and of course nobody knows he's sixth level, right? It's not like you wear it on your chest, right? And he flattens the guy, right? So this is how it works, right? Be careful who you attack, and these are things that the group learns as they go. So that's a kind of a side story to just kind of, I guess, answer the question that is, if you player characters go off the rails, if you will, even though there's no rails, and they just go somewhere that you haven't expected, at least try to have a general idea of what might be there, and then rely on the procedures. Even if you get some odd results, it will still kind of play itself out. Several years ago now, I was playing a one-on-one, what they call them, duo, I guess, or duet games, with my player, Nikki, and we were playing Dungeon Crawl Classics, and they had a mission. Their character was asked to go to this area to collect something. I can't remember exactly what it was. And I was using a Thousand Islands, which sadly is not available anymore. And the way that it's described there is it's like, this place is 2 days to the east or something to that effect. Well, it took way more than 2 days. Every time she would start going in that direction, something would happen, and she kept getting distracted. And basically, because she was going there to get something kind of self-serving, if I remember right, she needed to get something to bring back to this person so the person could do something for them, right? So it wasn't like it was a true ticking clock. And if she got distracted, then she got distracted. And then she met different NPCs and she had different adventures and went off in various directions. And I would always laugh and I'd be like, it's been like 2 months and it's supposed to be 2 days to the east, right? But in the end, that's the adventure, right? That type of campaign, that campaign, I guess is the best way to say it, was a campaign about exploration. And because it was about that, there really is no wrong turn. There's no side quest. There's no regular quest. They're just doing what they want. I mean, ultimately, your players will want a sense of fulfillment and completion, so they will start to lock into things and finish them, right? I think if you're new to kind of open worldy kind of play, both as a player or a GM, the tendency is to just, I can do anything and run around in different directions and do stuff. But people will eventually, if they stick with it, they will eventually start to kind of constrain themselves and say, hey, that's cool that there's a treasure map from these trolls, but why don't we deal with that later? Because remember, we're going to this wizard's tower because we want to get this, this ingredient for this potion that we needed for this other thing we were doing. Let's try to finish that first, right? And they will do that. And it's fun because you just keep throwing stuff at them as a GM once they reach that point where they will not follow every quest. And it's fun to watch them look at it and go, ooh, should I? And then make a decision. It's kind of fun for me anyways, because it makes the world feel alive. They're not doing everything because there's so much to do. You could never do it all. And once the players realize that, they will become more picky as to what they do. So how do we handle players or player group when they're going in one direction and they just turn and decide to go somewhere else? Well, we let them do it and we try to handle it in a way that feels right for our world, and we fall back on procedures. I guess that's long and short of it. I would love to know what you guys think about this. This might have been a little rambly because I threw a few stories in to kind of give you some illustrations. Hopefully this was helpful. Let me know if you have run open world sandboxes or are running and you have stories or suggestions. Please feel free to put them in the comments so you can help other people out. Or join my Discord or join my Discord server. You can find a link in the description. And there people are always talking about stuff. We have a running the game group room, I guess you call it, in Discord. And people are always talking about what they're doing and asking questions and learning from each other because everybody plays a little bit differently. And that's fantastic. That's what makes this type of hobby so great. There's no one way to do anything. And I love it. Anyways, I'll talk to you soon.